throttle is a big one as well. A lot of people I see do things like power loops, and they'll come out the power loop, they'll come down, they'll flatten out too early instead of making a smooth arc out of it. They'll just flatten out, so you're actually just falling straight, perpendicular to the airflow with the quad flat, and then they'll just bang in the throttle, and that is just, again, that's a limitation of the aerodynamics. You can't solve that with a PID controller, and as these PID controllers get faster and faster, I mean, I know these processors are getting faster, but it's kind of on an exponential curve. What am I looking for? It's like diminishing returns. If we double the processing power, we're not going to get double the removal of prop wash. It doesn't work like that. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. Let's have a look at the chat, just see if I've got any questions. Nick Burns. Hey Nick, how are you, man? Good to see you in. Feed. Anybody got the new Turnigy graphene? They're on my radar, Paul. Hey, good to see you too. I will check those out for sure. I'm actually quite interested in checking out those new, the new AC. There's some new high volts that AC are doing, which look pretty cool. I'm hearing some good things initially, but you know what it's like. There's always hype with this new stuff. Let's just change view for the sake of it, shall we? Let's go to this one. Oh, this is the other one, of course. I don't know if I showed you this. So this will be so we can do stuff on the bench and talk about base flight and look at settings and things for that. There we go. So yeah, I will be probably having a look at a few new batteries. As you guys know, my main battery, the Ready Eddy 1500 95C packs. I love those packs. They're just consistent. Every pack I get gives me the same performance, and you know what a big fan I am of consistency. So yeah, let's have a look. NJ, it's my favourite pilot, but volume up. Okay, Tornado Girl. Thank you, Tornado Girl. That is very sweet of you. You can't have seen many top pilots if I'm your favourite pilot. What else have we got? Show us your rates. I don't think I've got anything I can plug in to show you. It's yeah, I'm waiting for some USB extension cables. The way I've got stuff set up, my computer's down the far end, so I've got problems plugging things in at this end of the bench at the minute. But what I can tell you about rates, because that's a really good question, thank you for asking that, Andy, is that I think most people go for a super rate that is way too fast. You may be like 1300 degrees per second, 1400 degrees per second. And I think what you end up doing by adjusting just the super rate like that is you end up with a really vicious curve. And what that gets you, it might get you a really nice kind of soft center stick. And I do like it where the center stick isn't too sensitive. But the problem is there's two things you get out of that. One, you end up with a roll rate that's super crazy high. And when you go all the way over, if you find that you're constantly overshooting when you stop, I mean, it's a timing thing. It really is a timing thing. You get used to certain rates, and 1500 degrees per second for me, that's just ballistic. It's way too fast. If the style of flying you like is just to do very, very fast snap rolls and very fast snap flips, and that is your style, then that's something that you kind of have to deal with, and you have to get used to it and time to it. Now, me personally, I find that too ballistic, and it doesn't do anything for my flying style. I prefer to fly very smoothly, and you'll notice a lot of my rolls are half speed, sometimes quarter speed, sometimes I go out for a really slow roll, and I think that all adds to the flow of a flight. And I don't find that just speed snapping the roll every time I do it is, for me, again, this is so subjective, it's like art, isn't it? Everyone has a different thing that they like, and a different pilot they like, and a different preference, so please take this with a pinch of salt. But for me, it looks to have more flow when you control do more controlled and smooth. Like if I'm popping the throttle and going up over a tree and I want to transition and do a roll over the other side, I want all of those things to end so that as I come out the roll, bang, I'm on the next, I've stopped dead above the ground and I'm on the next trajectory that I'm heading towards something else. I don't want to go over, snap round and then fall for a bit and then grab it and go. That doesn't feel like it's got much flow to me. So I tend to, so there's two things with that. One, my rates generally, my super rate, my right at the end of the stick is around 1,000 degrees per second. And that always surprises people. I've had people before say, "Damn, what are your rates? You know, that's got to be faster than me." And I tell them, they're like, "That's way slower than I've got them. I've got them at 14 or 15." So I'd rather use the extreme of the stick predictably and go and have 1,000 at the end point and go around. I'd rather have that usable endpoint that I know really well and I can predictably time it. And 1,000 degrees per second, that's quick. Like you can get round that with, you know, I can do that a foot off the ground with a little pop, not lose any altitude and hit the ground, and that works absolutely fine for me. So I would say if you're finding yourself in that position where you're overshooting a lot, or it just feels a bit unpredictable at the end of the stick, then try reducing your super rate. Get your endpoint down. I'm at 1,000. Snake FPV, look at that guy fly. I mean, he's an awesome pilot. And I chat with him after one of the LDO podcasts when he came on for a chat. And right after the podcast, I continued to chat with him. We were chatting about KISS and the differences between that and bait and flight, especially big chat about rates and all the differences between the flight controllers. And he, on some of his setups, was at 900 degrees per second, and he was very much of the same. You know, it was a while ago I spoke to him, but I'm pretty sure it looks similar to me in the rest of the videos I see of his. Same thing. His endpoints aren't nearly as fast. Now, the other thing that marries up to that is the mid stick. So the mid-stick feel, if you go for a vicious curve and you go for like a 14 or 1500 super 8 at the end, and you end up with this pretty vicious curve, you'll find your mid-stick is really erratic. And the mid-stick is where I live most of the time when I'm doing acro. When I'm doing those nice half rolls, I just need the detail in the mid-stick. And this is something that, again, when I was chatting to Snake, the detail in the mid-stick on the KISS flight controller was epic, and that is the only thing I miss about KISS, because I truly believe you can get base flight to fly very close in feel to KISS, but there's something about the magic of the KISS rates that I'm always hunting to try and find in terms of feel, and I really think a lot of that magic lies in that curve and in the mid-stick. So what I would do in that case is not to have such an aggressive curve. So first of all, find your end stick point. Find that super fast, right at the end of the stick. I'm really comfortable there. I can go right the way around, and I can time a full flip, or can you time a double flip, double roll? Sorry, can you do two like consistently? Can you pop, spin twice, and catch it? That's a really good test, because those guys with the 14 or 1500 degrees per second at the end, I'd love to know if you can time that, because you're far better than me if you can. I always find I could time a double roll, a single roll on 1400 degrees per second. Felt a bit like hit and miss. Double roll, I felt like I was guessing. That just felt really weird for me. 1,000 degrees per second, that's fine. I've really got the timing down. It just feels good. Frequent Flyer RC in the chat. How you doing, brother? So yeah, the mid-stick detail is a really, really important part of my flying style and what I consider to be my flow, and I knowing that area of the mid-stick is really important. So, and I'm talking about the mid-stick of not so much yaw, but certainly pitch and roll, and I want that to be consistent. I don't change the feel of flip and roll between pitch and roll. I like those two things to be the same, so that however I'm moving around the stick, but from the center, it feels the same either way. If I was going to increase slightly, I might increase. I have experimented with increasing my rates on pitch, because I find pitch, I don't feel like in terms of muscle memory, I find pitch a bit more awkward at full stick in terms of the travel. That might be because I'm a pincher and not a thumber. I think that's a downside of pinching for me. With thumbing, you have kind of more dexterity for that kind of thing, but I didn't feel I could have the precision that I can with pinching. That's one of the reasons why I pinch. I did, when I was flying model helicopters back in the day, fly thumbs for probably like 6-7 years, so I gave it a really good go, but then I switched to pinching when I was watching a helicopter pilot called Alan Szabo Jr., who was just ridiculous. He's an Align team pilot. The guy's a monster. But yeah, I saw him flying pinch and I thought, that's why I can't do this crazy maneuver, so I'm going to switch over to pinching, which I did, and I haven't looked back. Just fine for me, it works, but it's horses for courses, guys, whatever you feel comfortable with. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion on rates. Try and get some detail in the mid-stick, and the way you will do that, the way you will get detail in the mid-stick, the way that's worked for me is to increase your RC rate. So as you increase your RC rate, your super rate, your end point is going to go up. Okay, but what's going to happen is, what you want to do is, for me, I know my target is 1,000 degrees per second at the end of my stick. So 1,000 degrees per second, I'll increase my RC rate, and what that will do will start to flatten out that curve for the mid stick. So there won't be so much, it won't feel so erratic, it won't feel so weird in the middle. It will actually make that curve more linear, and that means it's a more direct feel across the middle of the stick. So I'll raise RC, usually I run my RC rate at 1.1 in base flight. So I'll have a 1.1 in base flight, and then it's 78, 79 on the Super 8, then brings the endpoint back to about 1,000 degrees per second. That feel gives me detail in the middle. The center isn't, it's still soft, so it's nice for that fine adjustment and movement when I'm tracking in nice straight lines and cornering and what have you. So the center feels good, there's detail in the mid stick, and the endpoint isn't too wacky. Don't also forget, when you combine pitch and roll, you're then essentially doubling the rate. So you can, if you go right into the corner, you've got 1,000 degrees per second on roll and 1,000 degrees per second on pitch, you then end up with crazy speed. So there is a way to get crazy speed out of your flips and rolls if that's something you're after. I mean, occasionally, I don't know if you spot it, but in some of my flights I like doing diagonal flip rolls, so because they're a half sort of 50-50 thing, and they look ballistic, and that is with those rates, that 1,000 degrees per second rates. But once you start combining the rates, you end up getting some really crazy fast stuff. Two-stroke me, good name. Your wheel spin explanation was by far the best I've seen. More trick tutorials in the future. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if that was one of my, because I've got the old Acro School series, and I think a lot of that stuff is still pretty valid. I'm going to try and update a lot of those tricks because I've got more to talk about on the subject. But I did talk a little bit about yaw spins in the Acro School prep video. I think it was one or two. It's one of those two videos I talked about. Yeah, I think it was the second one. Is where we were talking about consistency of camera angle. So in that video, yeah, I did talk a little bit more about yaw spins, and once you get an idea behind some of the science of it, and making sure you're consistent and making sure your fingers all feel the same thing every time, then it won't be difficult for you to nail those. It really won't. They're never not scary for me if I'm doing them. Like they look the coolest when you go up over a tree, flip directly over the tree, which is now a lot closer to you than the ground is, doing that fast yaw spin and then exiting the way you came. That for me is the one that I always try and do as often as possible. I think that just looks cool as hell. So yeah, that is something that all that stuff's totally achievable. I mean, if there's any maneuver that you particularly want me to break down, let me know, and I'll obviously maneuvers that I've done, or maybe one that I haven't done and I might know but just never fly it. Just give me a challenge and I'll try and break it down for you. Can confirm that. Hey, Rob is now. That's my buddy. He doesn't live too far from me. Rob's quite an interesting one, actually. I'm going to talk about you, Rob, because he's someone who started primarily in the simulators. He was over on Liftoff, so there is absolutely no reason if you're trying to get a beginner into this, or if you are a beginner yourself, there is no reason why you can't start learning in the sim. And it does save you a bit of money and a bit of heartache and makes you a better pilot. There's just no harm in doing it. And Rob has spent loads of time in Liftoff. He's actually got a really good channel. Rob is now, if you go and check out his YouTube channel, on all the updates that come out on Liftoff, and he talks about all the track editors and the hottest new tracks. And he's actually a bit of a beast. I'm sure he'd kick my ass racing in Liftoff, no doubt about it. But when it comes to doing the real stuff, I've slowly been getting Rob out onto his real quad in the real world. And it's been an interesting thing, because I've said it in previous videos, get your simulator to fly like your quad, and then the sim becomes useful to you. But the problem is, he's totally learned how to fly in the sim, and now his quad feels weird. And the other thing with simulators, as good as they are, and this goes for all of them, none of them really get gravity right, and you have to mess around with the available physics options you have in terms of drag and power. Power's another one. Every default tune or default power setting of a quad in the simulator is way too powerful, way too powerful. Bring the power setting down until you know it feels realistic. I know it's loads of fun punching out and getting to the top of a skyscraper in 3 seconds or less, but it's not realistic. We're not, unless you're running a 6S setup, which I know most of you are. I know it's defunding it a bit, but make the sim useful to you. So take the power out, maybe up the gravity a little bit, so it feels like it's falling the way your quad does. If this thing floats in the simulator way too much, and you're thinking, well, my quad doesn't float like that. Okay, adjust it in the sim. Make it feel like your quadcopter, and then again, the closer that feels to your quad, the more useful that is to you. You can start learning new tricks, and you'll go out with your quad, and stuff won't feel that different. But yeah, Rob's kind of relearning coordinated turns, whereas in the simulator he does a lot of sort of hard banking and bank and yank, which is actually a pilot term for flying planes. It doesn't really work so well on quads out in the real world, because you have to do a lot more input of the yaw to get a nice coordinated turn. Just a simple turn to get smooth is a lot harder than people think. If you want a really nice smooth turn, you've got to have great altitude control with the throttle. You've got to be banking, you've got to be yawing, you've got to be pitching forward the right amount, and you're marrying all those things, and you've got to get those things into muscle memory. Stuff we'll go through in the acro school stuff. Who's this? Hello to my boys Sam and William. All three of us are watching you. Hope you're well. Johnny. Okay. Hi Sam and William. Hope you're well. Thanks for tuning in. What else have we got? MC Creations, hey man, there's a Coke thing in that quad. Yeah, I talked about this earlier. So what this is, in fact, let me just show you this now. So I've got to mess around with this fancy cameras just to show you what I've done here. Let me just get the focus right. There we go. So what I've actually done is nothing more than a print, and I've wrapped the low ESR capacitor. Don't know if you can see that, but that's not actually difficult to do. What I might do is in a upcoming video, I'll do a little link with the PDF for this that prints it out to the right size. This is a 35 volt low ESR capacitor at 1000 microfarads, which is what I recommend for 4S. If you're going 5 or 6, you want to up the voltage. On 6S, you really want to be kind of, I'd go straight for a 50 volt, because those back EMF spikes are pretty nasty. But yeah, 35 volts, 1000 microfarads, low ESR cap. If you're putting one of these on your board, that will print out. And then all I did was turn some sticky tape, the normal parcel tape, clear tape, turned it upside down, and then stuck the print side down across it, and then which gives it that gloss. And then I just wrapped it round, and it just makes it. And you could do whatever can. Red Bull's probably a popular one. Just these little detailing things I do to make stuff look nice. You'll probably notice that I'm on any of my builds I go a bit overkill. Like I start, I don't like the red wires, so I end up going with all black or black and white. Try and make things look a little bit nicer, but that's just me. I'm obsessive about making things look beautiful. only to go out and take it into the field and wreck it. You know how it is. Can I get Coke to sponsor me? That would be awesome. I'll Coke the devil though. Have you tried the Helio RC Spring? Any performance difference? Okay, so I haven't tried the Helio Spring, but I am going to order one. I wanted to try a couple of different flight controllers out on this 6-inch. I was actually, let me show you this. So this is actually, anyone want to guess what that is before you should all know what that is. This guy here is a race flight controller. This is the Race Flight 1 controller, and this is actually a really, this is the first one. This is when they first came out. And I'll show you this. This is the V1. So I know they've changed a whole ton since they first came out, but this was the first version of the Race Flight controller, and it was one of the early prototype boards. I don't know if you can see, I've actually got a signature on the back of this because they signed them back in the day. I don't think, it might be RS2K, I don't know. But I was going to, you can still get the latest software for this guy, and I was going to put this in to this 6-inch to see how Raceflight does on it. But the problem is these early ones, they've only recently added OSD. I can't give up the OSD. I just can't do it. I just don't feel like I've got a time when how did I ever manage without an OSD? Like, especially on a quad like this that's running Crossfire, and I'm doing long range stuff. I want to know my voltages. I want to know my RSSI. I'd just be really uncomfortable flying anything without an OSD. So yeah, I don't think the Race Flight controller is going to go in there, but I am going to put something in here to try out a few different ones, because I will say this: the 32 kilohertz F4, which is the F405 that I've got here, this guy has been really problematic on bi-blades on the 6-inch quad, and I'm still starting to question whether I've got problems with this particular board. So I'm going to try something with an MPU 6000, because that gyro is just bulletproof. It just works. There's very rarely any kind of problems with that gyro. So I might do that. I think that the Helio is a 32-bit controller and MPU. I might actually even try the Betaflight F7, because that has a switchable gyro. That has one of the 32-bit gyros, and it has a MPU 6000 as well, so you can switch between either. So I don't know, I'm going to experiment, but I'd like to get the best tune possible I can out of this 6-inch quad, preferably on bi-blades, because A, they sound completely awesome with that low pitch hum, B, the efficiency is amazing over tri-blades, and one of the main reasons why tri-blades are less efficient than bi-blades is because if we take a quad blade, for instance, that's a good example. You've got two blades like this. The dirty air that's coming off the back, or the turbulent air, the wake that's coming off the back of the blade that's leading in that direction, is immediately picked up by this blade that's coming round. So by having a blade that's right next to it, adding blades does increase your thrust, but at the cost of efficiency. And one of the efficiency problems is that the leading blade, the trailing blade, is going straight into the wake of the leading blade, and so as it goes round, it's not running as efficiently. If you use a bi-blade, you've got 180 degrees between those two rotating points, so it's working through much cleaner air, and so there's less drag, less blades, less drag, so they end up being way more efficient. So that lower hum sounds completely awesome. But yeah, they don't tune as well. They're not quite dynamically, they're not quite as well balanced. And I have got a really nice prop balancer. I did actually balance the props, the 6-inch blades that I had. I have two sets. I've got the Gemfan Flash 6-inch blades and the Avant 6-inch blades, the Emax Avant, and both of them have a slight issue where dynamically they're causing a frequency that the filters aren't liking, and the 32 kilohertz gyros, I just don't think they're working too well. And I was actually chatting, and my friend Bloods, who's the designer of the Archon, the frame that my main frame, when we were flying that, Sorry, when I was flying that, we were trying to problem solve with the black box, the filtering issue, to see if we could try and find out where all the noise was from these biblades. And yeah, it was really difficult to try and tune out some of the wobbles and weirdness we were getting. So I'm going to try a flight controller with an MPU 6000 and see if we get something better. Yeah, okay, so yeah, two-stroke. Me, as just said, I absolutely love how 6-inch blades fly, but the damn jello keeps me away. Yeah, it is a problem. There's actually two types of balancing as well. So you've got the static and the dynamic balance. Balance the props as well and actually shave a little bit off. Well, this is what we used to do on props anyway, on the bigger props, is actually shave or even drill tiny little sections out of the side of the hub. Not enough to actually affect the integrity of the strength of it, but you can actually take material out the center hub on the edges, just so that it balances at any point you put it around the balancer. You can actually stop it and let go, and it won't have a bias to want to tilt either way. So yeah, that's something interesting. I've tried the MPU 6000 6-inch biblades and still no luck. Yeah, I think there's going to be some trickery to be done in the filtering, to be honest with you. It's something I'm going to explore, because I think we're missing a trick with 6-inch quads on biblades. I just think it's so cool. And this thing's heavy. Like, this is over 700 grams when everything's on it, the GoPro and a 1500 milliamp battery, and it's a beast. It's not light. Once all that stuff's on there, and I'm still getting on those biblades between 6 and 7 minutes of flight time. So think about how efficient that is. I mean, it does make a huge difference. So I really want to get that to be a good long range 6-inch flyer. So I'm blocking your logo. There you go. There's some shameless promotion for you, bloods. So yeah, I'm going to experiment with that, and I'm going to have a look at, and you can black box with this. So I'm going to do some real testing on that, and maybe we'll even look at some black box data and see if we can suss out what's going on with it. Tone Star, old school NJ. I run 6-inch 3 years ago at the Nats. Yeah, I know. Well, when I got into this, the first freestyle quad I had, I was actually running. What was the name? So the frame was called the Icon X. Was it Iconic X? That was it, Iconic X, and it was kind of a rip-off of the QAV 500, but it had foldable arms, and that was running some T motors, like 800 kV. They were, I can't remember what the size the stator was, but they were tall. They were tall and powerful, and that ran on a 3500 milliamp 4S, and that would fly for about 6-7 minutes on biblades. That was a monster. 9-inch props. That was big, and that thing was fast. That was good fun. And it wasn't until the QAV 250 came out that everyone suddenly went nuts for quads. That's when that smaller size came out. That's when all of this really, sort of the birth of all of the mini racer stuff, the QAV and the Blackout, and that size just became so popular. Have we got any more questions about stuff that you guys would like to know? Cobra, Mikey Dread says Cobra 1916 kV on 6-inch biblades. Yeah, 1916 is a good, 1960 is a good kV on 4S. 4 or 5S, that's pretty cool. Actually, for 6-inch biblades of a decent pitch. You don't want to go too light on the pitch. I actually tried, because these are 1950 kV. These are the race spec Emax, the new ones. So I fly in the Emax. You know, I did a video on the Emax Hawk 5, and we upgraded the motors on that. Those are the 2400 kV 2306, which are great, works great on that quad. These are those same motors, but down to 1950. And I tried some Dal 6040 tri-blades, and they were pretty gutless. They didn't work on this. You need more pitch. But the biblade 50, 40, 46, I think they are, Gem fans, were awesome. Michael says Crossfire versus FR Sky R9M. I don't know. I haven't got one yet. I've asked for it. So when that turns up, I'll have a look at it and decide. But I can only wholeheartedly recommend Crossfire. It's just been bulletproof. I've never ever had a failsafe on Crossfire, and I've flown in loads of different locations of varying types, loads of reflective locations with lots of concrete, wooded areas. It's just, what's nice about it is it's not in the forefront of my mind. When I fly FR Sky on an XM Plus, it's great. Like, honestly, I'm not hating on that at all. I love it. I've got plenty of quads that fly on it, and I never have a problem with it. But there is this bit in the back of my mind that says, I'm just a little bit cautious. I'm just a little bit wary of where I'm flying and whether I might get in a situation where I'll get a lockout. I have had lockouts before in reflective environments. It'll lock out for a second, like control's gone, and then it'll come back, and it's enough just to scare me for a second. With Crossfire, I just don't have to think about it. I don't think about it, and it's not a problem. I appreciate they're expensive. They're a lot cheaper than they used to be. But yeah, I've got the Crossfire Nano in here, which you can see wired up to this flight controller. We've got 4 connections there, TX and RX on the UART, plus 5 volts and ground. And then yeah, this flight controller actually just connects with a ribbon cable. It's such a clean build to take apart, which is one of the reasons why I love the Archon. You just connect the ribbon cable, put down the flight controller, but not backwards, because that would be a very bad idea. That's going to end in bad things happening. And then the Archon just goes into place like that. Top screws on, and she's ready to rock. So it's such an easy frame to work on this. And then I've got the TPU mount for the with the GoPro and the Crossfire antenna up there. It's just all really neat and clean. Super easy to work on this quad, which is why I love the both the 6 and more importantly my main one, which is the 5-inch. Snoopy FPV, Crossfire on all my quads. Yeah, they're good. It's good now the Nanos are down in price. That's a really cool thing. I think we know what my next frame should be. Yeah, I can't say anything bad about the Archon frames. They've been awesome. Really like them. That's an interesting topic actually in terms of liking ultralight frames, light frames. They're super ultralight. I don't know, we haven't got a name for the category for. Andy was talking about this in one of his latest videos on that new Diatone prototype, which I've got coming as well at some point, which is that one that runs on biplates. It's what, 170 grams on a 5-inch and flies for 10 minutes on an 850 milliamp 4S. I mean, that's just crazy. But in terms of freestyle, whether you like the feel of an ultralight, a light, let's call that a feather light. Should we say the feather lights are the ones that Andy got, the ridiculously light 5-inch? So I'd consider the Hawk 5 to be a light frame, and then I'd consider something like this to be more of a heavy frame. But I just love the feel of a heavier frame for freestyle. And my freestyle 5-inch is a really efficient setup. If I freestyle fairly lightly, there's one of my videos I did not that long ago with the really tall trees in it. And every flight I came down at 4.5 minutes. And that's on a quad that was, I think all up weight, that's about 620 grams with the GoPro, my 5-inch Archon, 4.5 minutes. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with running a heavier frame. It's really all the reason for me loving that is the inertia in that, in terms of how it projects when I'm going over a tree and I back the throttle off, how it falls under its own weight. I find that heavier quads are a little bit more predictable and a bit nicer for freestyle. The lighter the quad gets, the more piloting is involved in. So if I'm running a lighter quad, when it's actually free falling over a trajectory, like over the top of a tree or something like that, then there's a little more piloting and bringing the throttle back in. Whereas with the Archon, I really don't have to do that. I set it on its path, I back off the throttle, and it just tracks really predictably, falls really predictably, and I can, it just feels nice to fly. So that light quad versus heavy quad thing is just a total, it's a preference thing. But if you don't know what your preference is, you need to try a few of these things out. I know everyone doesn't have the luxury of having multiple quads, but I just generally I try not to encourage buying 3 or 4 of the same quad. I know if you're a racer, then you need the consistency, and you might have to spend your money on just buying the same frame 3 times and the same build 3 times. But if you're a freestyler, like, just go for something a little bit different. If you've got a fairly heavy quad, go for something light. Try and find out what gets you the greatest connection to your quad. Because I like both. I love the Hawk 5. It's so much fun to freestyle, even though it's purpose built as a race quad. Really, it wasn't built to carry a GoPro. I put a GoPro mount on it, and it's awesome to freestyle with. But so is my Archon, but it's awesome in a completely different way. So you just need to decide whatever works. What is that, Wayne or Wine Davies? Hi NJ. Hey man, how's it going? Snoopy JB. Made a quad with Dallas engine, Helio spring. Must be a crazy quad. Yeah, I am interested in this Helio spring. I'll definitely be checking it out. Okay, we are approaching the hour, so I'm probably going to call this test to an end fairly soon. Have any of you guys got any more questions? If any of you guys joined before I did any of the switching here, I'll just quickly summarize. So this is the new way that I will be doing my top down. If I want to do any live builds, I'll be able to do this now for you so that you can join me. This is stuff that I would normally do off camera. Maybe I can now do this because this camera is up here and out the way and not in the way of my hands. Before I had a tripod in my face, and it just slowed me down. So that's why I haven't done a lot of build videos lately. But it's going to be up there. This is all easy. So view 1 is here. This is so that we can talk about Betafly, because I haven't really talked much about PIDs and my rates and stuff in my actual videos. I know we've talked about it a bit today, but yeah, that's so we can talk through that stuff. I will be fixing any issues with this so that we can do a little bit of sim flying, and maybe we can talk about some of that stuff that I mentioned earlier in this live video. We can talk about some of these maneuvers, some of these new things, and things to practice in the sim, and you know what I do in the sim when I want to work on something. Maybe you'd be interested in hearing some of that. So we've got the sim view here, and yeah, it's all good. So I think we're all done with the questions. What mods have you done to the SkyStarts X120? Okay, Nick. Good to see you in the chat, buddy. Let me just quickly switch views, and I'll quickly talk about this, shall I, before we go. So in terms of this one, all I did, I mean, I know where you fly, Nick, that you probably don't have a problem with the D8 receiver. But the D8 receiver, the XM, not the XM Plus, but the XM, with objects in the way, even at close range, I've had so many issues across multiple radios with that thing just crapping out on me and getting RX losses, which is something I mentioned in my review video of this. So I swapped that out for an XM Plus, and immediately I've got no problems around some of the thick treed areas that I fly. Other than that, what else did I do? I put a proper run cam in. I noticed something that Albert said, Albert Kim mentioned, that I should probably mention as well. I don't think you had a problem with yours, but the camera that comes stock, quite a few of those on different models have had problems where the sensor was loose. So I didn't get around to testing that, which was a bit naughty of me. I stuck a proper run cam in here just because I have so many of them kicking around off of other models, but apparently it's a bit hit and miss with the one they provide, which is something I'll mention to. I might stick that camera back into this and just see whether mine had the loose sensor problem. So I'll find out what's happening with that. The other big thing I did, Nick, while you're watching, is I stuck, you see that dirty grey lump in the back, I stuck it's a 470 UF 35 volt capacitor, just because of the noise. These motors get hot no matter what. I've tried everything. I've mucked around for days with filtering, ESC motor timing, backing the PIDs right off. Is just, if you put 4S through something with these tiny bearings, they are the real culprits. 4S voltage through these, they're just going to get hot. And as I mentioned in my review video, just running these without the PID controller in the loop, so just running from the motors tab, that bypasses the PID controller. Even doing that, they get hot, which shows you that these motors are just going to get hot. As soon as you put a PID controller in and they stabilize the quad, it's going to get hot. So I'm just trying to do everything I can to try and keep the filtering as smooth as possible so I could raise the PIDs. Adding that cap actually let me raise my PIDs just a tiny bit. It did smooth out, did some smoothing out of the back EMF and of the filtering, and yeah, I actually managed to raise my PIDs up a little bit, which was good, so it feels even tighter. So yeah, other than that, it's as it was. The other thing I did, although probably a different reason for you, I know you ran reverse props, which, as you can see, if you might have clocked, I've done the same. The reason I did that was actually because I mentioned in the video, this frame's actually slightly dead cat. The motors at the back are closer together and the motors at the front are wider apart. Not enough really to make a difference on the flight controller. But one thing about running reverse props, it's really an aerodynamics thing, but and it probably will make nothing difference to the actual flight controller. But it's an interesting point, if anything, is that because the leading edge of the blade is now, or the most efficient part of the blade when you're in forward flight will be here, will be the front edge, you'll actually have more lift. The actual center point of thrust of the blade will actually travel slightly inwards, and then the same, because these are running reverse, the leading edge here for the direction of travel will move the center point of thrust slightly outwards. So by moving center of thrust in here, center of thrust out there, it's actually counteracting the geometry, or equalizing, if you like, the geometry of the quad. Of course, the caveat to that is when I do reverse, like backwards flight maneuvers, I'm then making the problem worse, because now while I'm traveling backwards, it's this edge that's actually becoming most efficient. So they're going to move inwards and these move outwards, but you know, whatever. I don't think the flight controller really cares. It will fly how it flies. But it's just interesting stuff, you know. Blah, blah, blah. I think we've caught everything. So thanks, guys. I really wasn't expecting many people to be in here at all. Thank you for hearing me waffle. I'm going to do some more of this stuff. If it's popular and you guys want some more of it, and I've talked about all the different ways we can now move forward. So yeah, maybe I'll list this live. I was just going to delete this afterwards, but maybe I'll leave it live so that people can check it out later and get some more opinions on it. But please bear in mind, it's a test. It's my first time doing this, just listening to the sound of my own voice. Hopefully I haven't driven too many of you crazy and there was some useful information in there. But yeah, all good. Thanks so much, all you guys, for stopping by. I honestly think I've got the best subscriber base on YouTube. You're all awesome. You're all really supportive, and big love to all of you. And yeah, I hopefully will see you very soon with some more videos and more acro stuff coming up. So take care for now. Thanks very much, guys.